Maybe you already have a flock of chickens and you saw my last video and it convinced you to add a few ducks to your flock. Or perhaps you're just now embarking on your homesteading journey and you decided to jump in with both feet and get day-old chicks and ducklings together. Whether you're starting with day-old chicks and ducklings, or you're wondering if you can integrate adults into a mixed flock, you've come to the right place. Coming up, we're going to go over some of the challenges involved with keeping chickens and ducks together and offer up some tips and ideas on how to keep a harmonious mixed flock. Welcome to Dragonway Farm. My name is Ginger and I keep a mixed flock of chickens and ducks here on my 6-acre farm in New Jersey. Now, back when my family first got involved in keeping poultry, about 20 years ago, we never even questioned whether you could keep chickens and ducks together. We just assumed you could. And as it turns out, it worked out just fine for us. But I see this question asked frequently enough on various different groups on social media that I thought I would throw in my 2 cents. Can you? I mean, anything's possible, but the real question should be, should you raise ducklings and chicks together in the same brooder? And the answer to that is a very emphatic no. If you've never raised ducklings before, you cannot even begin to conceive of the amount of mess that they are capable of creating. Ducklings are messy. Baby chicks in their first week of life are fragile creatures. Breeding chicks, you will be keeping an eye out for pasty butt and checking to make sure that none of them have just keeled over and died for no apparent reason. Ducklings, on the other hand, are fun, robust growing machines that spend all of their time trying to spread water to all corners of the brooder. Though chicks and ducklings have the same heat requirements early on, ducklings grow so much faster than chicks and they become cold hardy much sooner. So if you're brooding them in the same brooder together, you risk your ducklings overheating or your chick getting chilled, trying to maintain the temperature, or you just need an extra large brooder. But again, the ducklings are so messy that the water everywhere will make the chicks uncomfortable. In addition to that, because the ducklings grow so quickly, you risk your little tiny chicks getting trampled by quickly growing ducklings. So if you're jumping in with both feet and starting chicks and ducklings together, do yourself a favor and brood them in separate brooders. It'll just make life so much easier. Yes and no. It's perfectly safe to feed your chicks and ducks the same chick starter, even if it's the medicated kind. Now, there's this really old myth going around, and we heard it when we first got into chickens and ducks 20 years ago. And that myth is that medicated feed will kill your baby ducks. This may have been true in the past when the medications used to treat coccidosis in chicks was arsenic based. So waterfowl do have a lower tolerance to arsenic, but arsenic-based medication has not been used to treat coccidosis for quite some time now, so that will not hurt your ducklings. However, ducklings are not as prone to coccidosis as chicks are. There's really no reason to feed them medicated feed if they don't need it. So it's best to give them non-medicated if you can. If all you have on hand is the medicated kind, rest assured it's not going to kill your ducks. So yes, they can eat the same chick starter. Ducks, when they're very young and growing, do require a higher level of niacin than is found in commercial chick starter feed. So if you are feeding a regular chick starter feed to your ducklings, it is a good idea to supplement with Brewers yeast with garlic. So that will give them a little bit more niacin, which will help them to develop. We do have a future video coming out probably in mid-March that is going to cover raising ducklings. We'll be going into a lot of the specifics on raising ducklings properly. So if you have an interest in that and you have any questions, please drop your questions below in the comments and we'll make sure that we include them in the video. The short answer is that when you are brooding young chickens and ducks, it's always best, it's going to be easier and probably best for both species of bird to brood them separately when they're young. Both chickens and ducks are ready for the coop when they are fully feathered and can maintain their own body temperature. At that point, you can take them out of the brooder and put them into a coop and start integrating them. Depending on the breed of chicken and duck and the time of year and climate that you're in, that will fall somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks. At that point, you can start mixing them. Chickens and ducks can successfully be housed together, but there are some key differences between the two species. So once the sun goes down, your chickens will usually put themselves to bed and will want to roost above the ground. They'll sleep all night long, and in the morning when the sun comes up, they'll be ready to go out and start foraging. Ducks, on the other hand, would much prefer to stay out on a pond all night long. They'll nap and swim and forage, and then nap and swim and forage, and this is just what they would prefer to do. They don't tend to sleep all night long. They can, however, be trained very easily to put themselves to bed into a coop, but they tend to sleep on the ground. Their Muscovy ducks are really the only type of duck that wants to be above the ground and will roost, but most ducks that you keep will stay on the ground in like a little nest. So you're going to want to provide bedding like hay or straw for them to nest in. And it's a good idea to try to provide them some cover. If you have chickens roosting above them, either provide like a little poop guard on your roost, or give the ducks a little ledge to hide under so that they don't get chicken poo on them all night long. They will wash it off in the morning, but I mean, nobody wants to get crapped on, right? Another key thing to consider when you're planning to put chickens and ducks together in the same coop: chickens have no trouble at all navigating steep ramps and do very well in coops that are above ground. Ducks, on the other hand, do not. Ducks are awkward on the ground. They do not like going up ramps, and they will not go up anything that's really steep. So if you do have an elevated coop, you need to give them a gentle incline. So you want a ramp that's very wide and a very gentle slope, or make sure that you have a coop that's accessible to the ducks from the ground. When it comes time for your chickens and ducks to begin laying eggs, chickens are going to be fine laying in nest boxes above the ground, which makes it easy for you to gather the eggs. Ducks, on the other hand, will lay their eggs on the ground. You can provide a nesting area for them and hope that they will lay their eggs in the nest, but in my experience, some do. Some will lay in puddles, some will it seems to just fly out of them in the yard. Ducks are a little bit more unpredictable in my own experience. I'm sure some other people have ducks that lay consistently in their nest like they're supposed to, but just be prepared for that. And if you do have ducks nesting on the ground laying eggs, don't be surprised if your chickens start laying some eggs on the ground as well, the duck nest. Probably not. They're two different species. Chickens are usually pretty independent, though they are in a flock. Each individual kind of does their own thing throughout the day, and then they all come together and roost at night. Ducks, as we discussed in the last video, kind of operate on a hive mind. So when one duck does something, the rest of the flock usually follows. They might split up into little groups within a flock, depending on how many ducks you have. But for the most part, ducks kind of just stay together, and then the chickens will kind of stay separate from them. Usually they're not aggressive towards each other, and you shouldn't have any problems with fighting under normal circumstances, but definitely do not expect your chickens to be a suitable companion if you have a single duck or vice versa. You know, chickens need other chickens to be around, and ducks will need other ducks to be around, regardless of if you have them in the same coop together. Probably the biggest challenge centers around water. The fact that ducks are so messy and make such a mess of water is probably the biggest complaint amongst duck keepers. They're really, really messy. Set up a really nice chicken watering system with like the little nipples where all they have to do is dip their tiny little beak in there, and you can get away with cleaning it maybe once a week or so. If you add ducks to the mix, those type of watering systems do not work for the ducks. The ducks need to be able to dip their entire head into the water so that they can clean out their nostrils and make sure that they stay healthy. It's just a duck thing. Ducks do not need to swim, so you don't have to provide a pool or a lake, although your duck will love you even more if you do. Ducks genuinely do love to swim and bathe and play in water, but it's not necessary for their survival or their health. The only thing is you do need to provide water that is deep enough for them to completely submerge their head. And it should be clean. Plan on cleaning your water at least once a day, and if you like it to be crystal clear, multiple times a day. Because ducks basically track mud into the water and deposit it into whatever the water container is, and they just make a horrendous mess. In addition to that, they will track water all over where they walk, so if you don't have good drainage, your duck run, keeping chickens there, will become mud if you're not careful. So that is really the biggest complaint and one of the biggest challenges when keeping chickens and ducks together. Chickens do not like to get wet. Ducks are happiest playing in mud puddles in the middle of a downpour. A lot of people struggle with, what do I feed my mixed flock? Now, if you do have chickens and ducks for eggs, just a simple layer feed will do. It's only when they're little that they need the extra niacin while they're growing, so a regular layer feed will be just fine. If you have all flock or something like that, that's not going to hurt them at all. Probably not. Chickens and ducks do not compete for mates like two roosters would. So you're probably not going to have your rooster fighting with your drake if you have a drake. If you do not have enough hens, your roosters might take a liking to some of your duck hens if you have those, and they might try to breed with them. Don't worry if you see this. They will not hurt your ducks. Roosters cannot penetrate, so it's kind of just all for show. It's more annoying to the duck, I guess, having a rooster on her back. While I wouldn't worry about roosters in with ducks, you do have to worry about your ducks with your chickens if you have drakes in with the female chickens. Male ducks or drakes are the equivalent of a horny frat boy on spring break. They will try to have their way with anything they can catch. That means roosters, duck hens, other drakes, and unfortunately, chicken hens. While your rooster has internal genitalia, your drake is endowed with a corkscrew-shaped phallus, yikes, that can cause serious harm or even death to a chicken hen, or should he successfully breed her. Keeping enough female ducks around for your drakes is imperative. A minimum of 3 to 1 should be okay, but if you can do more, if you can do 4 or 5 to 1, that's even better. The more ladies your drake has, the less likely he is to bother the chickens. For the most part, you shouldn't have a problem as long as your ratio is appropriate. But keep an eye on your flock, and if you do notice a drake take an interest in a particular chicken hen, separate them immediately. He does have a serious chance of harming her or killing her. So chickens and ducks can easily be kept together as adults in the same space without too many problems. It's really not that challenging as long as you're mindful of making sure that their housing is comfortable and that your ratios are correct, and you make sure that you don't have any sexual predators out there in the form of horny drakes. You should be just fine having an integrated flock without too many issues. One of the ways to avoid, obviously, any sexual predator issues in your flock is to just keep the boys out. You can make this a female-only zone. Both chickens and ducks will lay very easily without a rooster or a drake around. Drop any questions or comments you might have about raising ducks or raising baby ducks for our future video, and we'll see you on the next one.